Good morning. Good to see everybody this beautiful morning. When I was president of GFOA back in 2010 and 11, we used to do these at 7:30 in the morning. How many people like to see 7:30? About 7.5 people would want to see this. And we used to do 7:30 in the morning, and then we had a twilight at 7:30 at night. Wasn't that a great idea? How many people like to see the twilights come back? Forget the hula dancers out there last night. We're here to learn. That's what it's all about. But we stopped the twilight because, to be honest with you, gang, everybody was looking for an open bar at the twilight. So we just decided to cancel twilight. But anyhow, look, what I plan on doing today for 15 minutes, talk about tax appeals, my own experiences. I brought in some exhibits. We'll look at county board judgment, state tax court judgment. We're going to be looking at a refunding bond ordinance in a second, and I'm going to kind of read the statute a little bit just so we're all familiar with it. And kind of as we go along, I'm going to kind of throw in some journal entries. Gee whiz, gang, we were here 8:30 to 4:30 yesterday. Did you see what journal entry? What kind of conference is this? I didn't see one journal entry all day yesterday. I had to go to my room and look at some journal entries yesterday. Going on with this. But looking at what are the ways that we can fund and pay for tax appeals or refunding bond ordinance. Be honest with you, gang, I've done this twice in practice. So I thought the first exhibit that we'll bring up, and I'll kind of read the statute, if you will. I'm not going to read the entire handout. We're going to put this all up on the GFOA website when we're done. But NJSA 48:2-51 allows us to issue refunding bonds. Okay? Any local unit may incur indebtedness, borrow money, authorize and issue negotiable refunding bonds, notwithstanding any provision or limitation contained in this chapter or any law, and in any amount determined to be necessary by the governing body of the local unit. And the important word there is and. We're going to kind of go back to it in a little bit. And approved by the local finance board to effect the refunding of the following purposes, which we're going to discuss. So the key thing here is twice in practice I've done a refunding bond. I got all these tax appeals in. I can't charge operations. I had no budget appropriation for it. So what I did was a refunding bond ordinance. It would be just like any other bond ordinance you would do in your general capital fund. It would be set up in general capital. But the key thing was what I had to do was, and what we have to do is introduce the ordinance, then make application to the local finance board, get their approval before we can actually adopt the ordinance. So really, we just can't go ahead. That's why the key word there is and approved by the local finance board. Okay, so just remember that. Just can't go forward like we do with buying a fire truck and we're done with it. Adopt it, introduce, adopt, and wait the 20 days stopping period to buy the truck. So here, it has to be approved by the local finance board. Okay? I just read A and B, and then I'm going to flip over to it, just a sample ordinance that you can see. And what we're going to do here is it allows us to paying and funding of refunding outstanding bonds to the local unit, including emergency appropriations, and amounts owing to other taxes levied in the local unit. So that's allowing us to go out and issue refunding bonds, which will issue, usually what I did in practice was issue a note for it, and use that money to pay off these taxes that were levied against the local unit. And obviously what we can do is, as we know, they talked about it yesterday when they looked at the bond ordinance, Section 20 expenses, which would be paying the cost of the issuance of such refunding bonds, including printing, advertising, accounting, and financial and legal expenses. So that's our Section 20 expenses. So when I put this together, what I decided to do is let me try to find an example of a refunding bond ordinance. And I guess in all my years of teaching, you start to build up an accounting library of everything. People call me for resolutions. I've got that in my notebook or flash drive, and I'm looking for ordinances. I've got copies of that. So, anybody here from Northvale? Okay, not picking on Northvale at all, but this is one that I had in my accounting library, where back in 1994, Ray was just talking. I taught him back in 1991. But this is just an example of a refunding bond ordinance that they had done back in '94. Okay, see it over here. We're not going to read the entire ordinance, but just kind of look at a couple pieces. A refunding bond ordinance providing for the payment of amounts owing to others for taxes levied in and for the borough of Northvale. This was in Bergen County. And what they did appropriate a sum of $700,000 for refunding bond ordinances to pay the cost and the issuance of the $700,000 in bonds and notes to finance such appropriation. So this I wanted to just include in the presentation a sample of an ordinance. Okay, so they did $700,000, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later. In this first paragraph, they had here $785,000 in tax appeal refunds. And what they were planning on doing was $785,000 was for various property owners in and said the borough for taxes levied by the borough for taxes levied by the borough for the years 1992 and 1993. Okay? And the important thing was what they did do in River Rail was in the 94 budget they did put in an appropriation of $100,000. So this is kind of an example of a bond ordinance where they had $785,000 was the amount of the refunds. They did put $100,000 in their budget. So the difference then is $685,000. And if I can go to just the next section, what they did appropriate was $15,000 for the Section 20 expenses. So they had $785 was the amount of the refunds. They put $100,000 in the budget, and then they did an ordinance for $700,000. $685,000 with the tax appeal refunds, and $15,000 with Section 20 expenses. So I wanted to just give you an example of refunding bond ordinance that they had done back in 1994. So going back, I just wanted to hit some bullet points with this, and then we'll also kind of look at the journal entry with that, since we're here to try to look at a few journal entries. Just a few bullet points dealing with the refunding bond ordinance. We've kind of talked about this already. Refunding bond ordinance must be approved by the local finance board. Okay, we know that. Ultimately, just can't go ahead and adopt it and be on your way. Usually when I put the application together, because you have to do an application to the local finance board. At that time, they were looking for at least a 3-point tax savings in your tax rate. So you just can't do refunding bond ordinances for small tax appeal refunds. This had a major impact on your tax rate. So they were looking for an impact on your tax rate of at least 3 tax points. So that was one of the things that I had to include and justify in the application. The other thing was, I did get and include in the application from our assessor. The assessor must certify a list of New Jersey tax court judgments and settlement stipulations. So in the application, we listed all the block and lots, owner's name, location, and the total dollar amount of these tax appeal refunds. So they justified and gave us back up to the application. Kind of makes sense. So I got that from our assessor. And usually, just be aware that only prior tax appeal judgments can be charged against the ordinance. Okay, you can't take current year judgments and charge them against the refunding bond ordinance. It's just going to be that much less you're going to realize through the amount to be raised by taxation. So only prior judgments were able to be charged against the bond ordinance. And the other important fact when I went before the local finance board was they designated the time period when I would have to pay off these notes. So obviously I issued notes to finance the project. You know, usually if you go to any of these seminars, you know, you can be in bond anticipation notes until the first day of the 5th month following the close of the 10th fiscal year. We all memorized that when we sat for the exam, right? But usually when I went before the local finance board, really what they wanted was, they wanted all my notes to be paid off. One year was 3 years and the other refunding bond ordinance was 5 years. So when I issued those notes, that issue I had to pay off over a 3-year period. The other one that I had to do was a 5-year period. Okay? So a little background with refunding bond ordinance. And hey, you know, it took all day to get a journal entry, gang. I know you're excited about it. How many people have journal entries? Yes. Oh, everybody. Hey, let's go to the track. Let's take the exam again. Why not? You know all this stuff. So obviously the ordinance is going to be recorded in general capital fund. You know, with the debit or deferred charge to future taxation unfunded, credit the ordinance, improvement authorization unfunded, and we'll set up our memo entry. And probably as you've seen with this, we don't need a down payment. Okay, don't need 5% down payment on the refunding bond ordinance. Okay, so that's a little bit about the refunding bond ordinance. Okay? Now we're going to move to, how about we'll talk about county board judgment. Okay, let me just kind of go down through. I brought county board judgment for my own municipality. I can make this a little smaller. How many people have seen and deal with county board judgments? Okay, actually that was quite enough more hands. Well, I'm also the tax collector in Cedar Grove. Okay, we both have CFO, tax collector. We don't have that many line items, about 4,700 line items. But what does create a lot of work is we have 3 utilities: water, sewer, swimming pool utility, and a solid waste collection district. So there's always fun stuff going on in Cedar Grove. So what I wanted to do here was just kind of bring a sample that I got last year of this is from County Board Judgment from Essex County. That's where Cedar Grove is located. Hangarani is the owner, 99 Eileen Drive. And key thing that I'm going to try to highlight here would be that it shows the date of issuance was June 29 of 18. Okay, this parcel of property, I'm just going to bring this a little further. The assessment went from $1,187,000 down to $1,001,000. Okay, so this was our county board judgment. Okay, when these judgments come in, what do you do with these judgments? Process them. First thing I do, gang, is I go find my assessor. Get the judgment. Rich, is this amount correct? Gang, I can show you judgments for transposition notes all the time. You know, I'm not picking on Essex County, but things happen. Mistakes happen. So I want to make sure, Rich, is this right? It's going from $1,187,200 down to $1,001,000. I want him to initial this. County board judgments, state tax court judgments, I go find my assessor. He's there 3 days a week, which is fine. I'll wait for him to come in. Rich, you gotta review this. Is this what you guys agreed to? The other thing that normally happens when these judgments come in, what normally comes in immediately with the judgment, or soon thereafter? Thank you. We get an attorney letter. The attorneys are sending me a letter. Please send me a refund. I send them a letter. I don't even have a tax rate, right? Because this judgment came out in June. I don't even have a tax rate. So how am I going to give you? Sometimes I get excited. How am I going to give you a refund? You know. And sometimes, Dad, be aware, there's no refund until there's an overpayment. No refund until there's an overpayment. So myself, as the tax collector, I know what, and we're going to look at it in a second, the calculation on this. We'll go back to the slide. So I will let him know about the amount of I'll let the attorney know that what I will do is reduce their fourth quarter tax bill by the amount of the refund, by the amount of the credit, okay? And any tax collectors here? We have tax collectors? Anybody? We got quite a few tax collectors? So look, important thing, learn from my mistake that I made one time. Okay, I'm going to reduce, this guy got we're going to bring it up in a second, a little over $2,000 refund. I reduced the fourth quarter of this was 2018. And I reduced then the preliminary for the following year. Because the preliminary levy should be 1/2 of the previous year's levy. Okay? So what I did when I was a rookie in Cedar Grove, go in, change the fourth quarter levy, reduced it, I changed the preliminary for the upcoming year, and that's all I did. I stopped. Then lo and behold, I didn't realize that I should let the assessor know that I adjust the preliminary for the next year, so the Mod 4 system, when the tax bills come out, they match my tax account, if you will. So just as a word to the wise, if any of the collectors here or at your municipality, you're reducing somebody's fourth quarter tax bill, you're adjusting the preliminary for 2020, make sure I send a memo to my assessor. Let him know that, hey, Rich, I reduced the preliminary for 2020. Make sure in the duplicate that preliminary also is reduced. So when the fourth quarter bills are generated, they're correct. So the preliminary matches my system. Everybody follow what I'm talking about on that? So I remember my first year when I was in Cedar Grove, I didn't do that. And then I'm saying, why are all these bills wrong? Because the duplicate had a higher assessment in there for the preliminary because they didn't tell the assessor to reduce it. So, kind of one of the things that, I learned from experience, my own mistake. So, just to do again, the calculation on this. Here, the calculation was $187,000 was the assessment, which reduced down to $1,000,001, and so the reduction was $87,200, and our tax rate received growth for last year was 2.936. So the amount of the credit that I put on this gentleman's fourth quarter bill was $2,089.32. I also reduced the preliminary for the upcoming year. Okay? In a minute, too, I'll bring up, I always do a resolution. Look, I was an auditor for 6 years. I worked for Samuel Klein & Company. That's really where I got my accounting background, putting audits together, financial statements. So I did that for 6 years, and I said, man, in 1983, let me get on the other side of the desk. So I couldn't see the growth 36 years. So I've been blessed, I've been in a great community. But, you know, all things have their seasons. You know, after 36 years and a fast, sometimes I go on the official website, you know, just to kind of putz around, if you know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, fun and games, right? So, for the journal entry, gang, obviously, you know, I'm reducing this gentleman's tax bill for last year by $2,089.32. So what am I doing? I'm going to reduce the reserve for 2018 taxes receivable, credit the receivable, okay? And then that's all I have to do at this point. Is that much less than I'm going to be realizing for the amount to be raised by taxation. And what I did was, if it did create a refund, if there was an overpayment on the account, then obviously I have to debit the receivable. There's too much cash going against the receivable. Move it out and move it to an overpayment account, and then issue the refund. Okay? So that's a little bit about, you know, county board judgments at this point. So we've got the refunding bond ordinance. You see my example with county board judgments, and maybe I always do a resolution, if you will. Anytime I cancel any taxes, I always do a resolution. Okay, and this is kind of like my sample, and I'll put it up on the website, the GFOA website, and this is the one for, we had the reduction here for $2,089.32. I'll always do a resolution for canceling taxes. County board judgments, state tax board judgments. We just had a veteran, 100% exempt, where he's exempt from paying property taxes, so I did a proration this year. I did a resolution for that. Always want to keep an audit trail. And it helps me, auditors come in, do the audit, hit my resolutions. I know we have some auditors here, I try to get them out as quickly as possible, right? I don't want to offend any auditors. But I'll always do resolutions. Always do resolutions. Okay. How about we talk a little bit about state tax board judgments at this point, all right? And I brought in an example from my own municipality this past year. This came flying into my office March 4th, 2019, addressed to me, dated March 1st, okay? And I'm like saying, what? Here's what I got in. And even my assessor was kind of like, he said, like, what? This came into my office. Our firm represents 691 Compton Avenue, street that anybody's familiar. Route 23 is Compton Avenue, goes through Cedar Grove. And I'm taking tax court judgments reducing the assessment on this property from $2,175,000 to $970,000. And not even that, like, where was this? I hope the judge isn't in the audience. Like, where have you been? They're doing this for, I have to bring it further up. This is for years 2013 and 2014. Where have you been for 6 years? Is it me? You know, they tell me, everyone tells me, my family members, why can't government run like a business? Like, you gotta give me a break. I don't have any money for this, so I'm gonna have to ultimately charge operations. So when I was putting this all together, I said, hey, this is a real neat example that, you know, really, I should say neat, add another word for it. Another example, like, where has this attorney been for 6 years? Now, hey, let's pour some salt in the wound, gang, all right? Because this wasn't negotiated, right? What does the attorney say? I would appreciate that you recalculate the interest due to our clients and forward a refund check to our firm's counsel, you know, to 691 Compton Ave, which was the location on off Route 23. So, not only did I have to go nuts with a reduction of $2,175,000 to $970,000, I also had to compute interest on this. Okay? So originally, you know, we talked to our assessor, we were going to appeal this, like, you know, the town has the right to appeal. So we talked to our attorneys, and at the end of the day, we felt that if we appealed it, we don't lose anyhow. So, okay, so now I've got to, my next step is, all right, gang, and let me kind of slide down to, in case some of you have not seen what a tax court judgment looks like. You know, this is a tax court judgment of New Jersey. All right, they come in, you know, they come in regularly at this point. I deal with them. It shows the location, shows the plaintiff the location, and a block and lot, and it shows the new assessment. The thing with the state tax court judgment, it doesn't show you the original assessment. That $2,175,000 just shows you the reduced amount. So I always then go back to my extended duplicate, verify that's $2,175,000. I go to my tax screen and make sure that amount is correct. Look, I was an auditor for 6 years, gang. I don't assume anything is correct. Verify. I need to verify. So again, Rich signed this on March 26th that, okay, Bill, you know, we're going to have to process the refund. And the important date with these judgments, gang, that I always look for is always the date on the judgment. Okay, because you want to look at a local finance notice and talk about it a little bit. Refund check should always be made between the 45th and 60th day of the date of the judgment. So I will always, when I get these state tax court judgments, I'm looking at the date on these things, gang. Mark my calendar. I'm going to issue the refund check between the 45th and 60th day because the plaintiff or the community can still appeal these things. So you don't want to issue a refund and then we're still in the appeal mode. So no free refunds between the 45th and 60th day. We'll look at that in the local finance notice in a little bit. So this is what kind of came in. So I had to do the calculation, gang. So how am I going to do this? All right. Oh, I kind of skipped over this. We'll have to get to this back in a second. That's my fault. Okay. So here, we'll have to go back a minute. I'm going to skip over that. So the tax appeals at this point, I know this was 2013. The original assessment was $2,175,000, got reduced to $975,000. Okay? So there's a reduction of a little over $1.2 million. Okay? The important thing is, whenever you're doing your tax appeal calculation, make sure you're using the tax rate for that applicable year. Okay? So, in this case, our tax rate in 2013 was 2.105. So I took the amount of the reduction, a little over $1.2 million times the tax rate. I, at this point, have to refund a little over $25,000. This is for 2013, then I had to do it for, I think, either, what was it, 2014 in the calculation. Okay, so I got to issue a refund of $25,000. Plus, I've got to compute the interest. The interest is going to be computed at 5%. How am I going to do this calculation? Okay, so the way we do it, we've been taught in the tax collecting classes, I've got to give a refund back of $25,000. I don't know how well you can see this, but what I've got to do is, it's kind of small, maybe I can make it a little bigger, hopefully it's not off the page. Maybe we can get it on there, maybe not, but anyhow, maybe I'll make it back. I'll leave this and then I'll make it smaller. But basically what I had to do is I've got to get $25,000 back. Well, what you start to do, gang, is you go back to the fourth quarter of 2013. See what they paid in the fourth quarter of 2013. Well, this taxpayer paid on November 5th of 2013, he paid a little over $11,000. Okay? So I know I have to give him that back plus interest at 5%. But I still haven't hit the $25,000 threshold. I got to go back to the August quarter at this point. So I go back, I look and see when they paid the August quarter. They paid it on August 1st. Okay? So August he paid us $11,009. I still hadn't met the $25,000. I got to go back now to the second quarter. Okay, everybody following? And I followed when they paid the second quarter, which they paid on May 15th. So then I really just went into our tax system and went into, you know, they have the interest calculator workbook, you know, your tax package. So all I really did was plug in the date that they paid. I issued the refund because I have to issue it within 60 days of the date of judgment. I issued it on April 16th of this year. Okay? You know, the computer automatically computes the number of days. Interest rate is going to be 5%. on tax appeal refunds. So I know based on the $25,000, the amount of interest that I have to refund is a little over $7,100 in interest. So try to give you a little bit of a flavor as far as if you get hit with this in practice, you should know how to do the interest calculation. It's going to be at 5%. But go back to that given year and start with the fourth quarter and start going back. Like in this case, it was much more than the $25,000. Okay? So I had to go from quarter to quarter, and that was fun and games. You always think you see everything, and you always try to stay on top of it. I'm surprised that they even, had this. But what I did do was, at this point, what we're allowed to do is just charge budget operations for the amount of this refund directly. So obviously, a debit to budget operations is ultimately going to reduce your fund balance. But this year we're starting a pilot program in Cedar Grove. How many people have pilots? People out there asking questions, because I'm learning about pilots. Maybe down the road I'll do something on pilots. We're going to have 4 to 60 units in Cedar Grove that are individually have to be built under this pilot program. So that's why I'm also on the division website, trying to see whether it's time. Ron knows what I'm talking about. But anyhow, so I'm charging operations, and I'm going to do the refund. And we're going to talk about the refund in a little bit also, as far as who it should be made payable to. Okay, so this is one of my instances with a state tax court judgment. So we talked about refunding bond ordinance. We looked at a county board judgment. You see my situation from earlier this year with a state tax court judgment going back to, I think it was 93, 94. So I just wanted to give you the example for 2013 at this point. Okay? So everybody's kind of, work with your assessor. When these judgments come in, I can't stress it enough, work with your assessor on these things. Okay? The other thing that I just kind of skipped over was, I should talk about, you can obviously appropriate tax appeals in your budget, okay, for refunds. I just kind of have 3 bullet points here. Tax appeals can be raised in the current fund budget as a budget appropriation inside caps. Budget appropriation would read reserved to pay tax appeal judgments. The chief financial officer will consult with the tax assessor for the required amount of the appropriation. Okay? So you have to work with your assessor to determine how much of an appropriation you need in the budget. Again, only prior year judgments can be charged against the appropriation. Current year judgments would be that much less you would realize for the amount to be raised. Okay? And they do allow you that the unexpended amount in the budget appropriation for the reserve to pay tax appeal judgments can be moved to a reserve account on the current fund trial balance. So if you don't fully charge out your appropriation, you can set up the unexpended balance in the reserve account on your current fund trial balance. Okay? So far, we've talked about the budget, county board judgments, state tax court judgments. Next thing that I thought when I was putting this together, there was a local finance notice that came out back in 1996 that I'm going to bring up. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but there's probably 3 really good sections that I kind of always refer to that I think we should talk about in the local finance notice. CTC 96-1, how many people have all their local finance notices in a notebook, right? I think these are all up on the website. So I guess that this was I should mention, I guess this was the resolution that I did on my tax court judgment. Okay, we did this back on April 15th. And I guess the amount of the refund, I think I had to do 2013 and 2014 at this point. The interest, I guess, on 2013 was a little over $7,100, and I did the same thing for 2014. The interest was a little over $5,900. So we had to pay $32,000 in both 13 and 14. I wish the judge would have given this to us a lot sooner. We cut the interest down. Where have you been for 6 years? Time to wake up. But anyhow, so I always do a resolution. And what we're going to talk a couple of paragraphs here dealing with CTC 96-1. I know this goes back like 23 years, issued in early 96, but it really talks about a lot of the things dealing with tax appeal refunds. Okay? And I'm going to bring up a couple sections, and I'm going to have this up on the GF Lloyd website. You can read through the whole thing on your own. But I think the real important paragraphs here is, and and I kind of talked about it a little bit, is this paragraph really here dealing with the timing. Current law provides that refunds stemming from successful tax appeals must be paid within 60 days from the date the judgment is entered. That's why I look at that date on the tax judgment. I'm working off that date. I want to issue the refund within 60 days. However, both the plaintiff and the municipality have 45 days from the date of judgment in which to file an appeal. In order to prevent refunds from being made, if properties are going to make an appeal, refund of taxes stemming from a judgment should not be made until the 46th day after the date of judgment is entered. Okay? So just be aware, I'm always marking my calendar when I'm going to issue these refunds. Between the 46th, 45th, and 60th day. Okay? Everybody's okay with that? Next important paragraph is, that I do want to talk about, is important, gang. Whenever I issue these refunds, I bring up the person's account. Are their taxes up to date? Are their water and sewer up to date? Because we have water, sewer, swimming pool. I'm not going to issue a refund check to the attorney if there's still delinquencies on this parcel of property. So one of my rules, I immediately, okay, I'm going to do this refund, like the one I just had earlier, I bring up that block and lot. Are their taxes up to date? Is there water and sewer on the account? We just had Burger King a couple years ago. They owe the town $3,000. So out of the refund check, I took $3,000 and turned it over to our water utility. Now, granted, it only can be, they talk about it in the local finance notice here, it can only be on that parcel of property. If that homeowner owns like 2 or 3 other properties in your community, and they're delinquent, you can't use the money from this property A and move it to property B and C, okay? It can only be on that one particular property. So I'm always talking, before I issue any refund check in, are your taxes up to date, water and sewer up to date, okay? Other important thing is the next, same page, import this outline right here, okay? Important. When the plaintiff attorney is on record, the payment is to be made to the attorney on behalf of the plaintiff. The check made out both to the attorney and the plaintiff. Usually there's always going to be an attorney on these things. Never issue the check to the property owner. I always mail the check directly to the attorney. They're going to take their piece of the action and then give it to their client at that point. So checks should never go directly to the property owner. Always made payable to the attorney on behalf of their client. Okay? So just some rules out of the local finance notice. And I just have one other paragraph that I'm going to allude to that we talked about a little bit earlier, dealing with the refund. There's a lot of other things other than tax appeals here. But I think the other thing is that this last paragraph talks about the amount of the interest, which we talked about. You see in my case, 5% interest. If a judgment indicates the interest is waived on the refund of the overpayment, usually if it's negotiated, they'll negotiate that no interest will be paid. Okay? So if it's been negotiated, the 5% interest is not calculated. Okay? Negotiated settlement. If the judgment does not indicate that anything about interest is to be calculated at 5% on the amount of the overpayment when such overpayment occurs on an annual basis. From the date of the overpayment, remember how I went back to that 4th quarter and kept going back, to the date of the refund, which usually we do the resolution on Monday night, which in this case was April 16th. I'll do interest to the next day, which would be the 17th. That's when the check is available to the attorney. So let them know, you want to pick up the check, come up to my office. But obviously, they're just telling me to mail it to them, Again, the refund of taxes and interest must be done by resolution of the governing body. So we took care of that, okay? So this is a local finance notice. I know it's from about 23 years ago, but there's still pertinent information that, we should be aware of in this local finance notice. And I'll make sure that GFOA has my PDF and everything that I brought in, so if you want to refer to it, we're here to learn. That's what it's all about, share knowledge, okay? Okay, so, a couple other bullet points here. Now, what I did here was I wanted to just do some internal controls over tax appeals. A few other bullet points yet. And some of these we've talked about already. These are some of my internal controls that when I get these judgments in, what do? Okay? Number one, County Board of Taxation and Tax Court of New Jersey judgments should be reviewed and initialed by the tax assessor for completeness and accuracy of the amount of the assessment reduction. So I mentioned earlier, I go find my assessor. Rich, is this thing right? And he initials every single one. I can pull it out of the file. It's got his RH on it and the date. I want him to review this. Because these things come in, I've seen transposition errors. Okay? Important too, my rule of thumb, tax appeal reductions are processed based upon County Board of Taxation and State Tax Court of New Jersey judgments, not the stipulations. The stipulation is like the agreement between parties, but we don't have a final judgment. I'm looking for the adjustment. I'm not refunding anything off a stipulation. I know the manager just came down like 2 months ago. Oh, Bill, I got the stipulation. We got to issue this refund. I said, Tom, I need the judgment. I'm not issuing any refunds. It's nice after you're there 36 years. You just tell them no. You know what I mean? You don't agree with me to hell. That's, I'll go find someplace else to work. Retire, I'll go someplace else. So you got that benefit. But I'm always looking for judgments, guys. I brought up that county board judgments, state tax court judgments. No refunds on stipulations. I want the actual judgment. Wait, be patient. One of my rules. We talked about this. Refunds should always be between that 46th day and 60th day. We talked about that already. As far as when to actually cut the check. We talked about this already. When the plaintiff's attorney is on record, the payment should be made to the attorney on behalf of the plaintiff, with the check being paid out to both the attorney and the plaintiff. Don't send the check to the property owner. We talked about that. No tax appeal refund is made until there's an overpayment. Okay, how do we get those county board judgments in? You mentioned, you guys know, the attorney letters coming from the attorney. Please send me the check. I write it back. I have no overpayment yet. I'm not sending you any money. I'll give them a credit, and I'll also email you a copy of the reduction I can print out the tax account, so the attorney can see the amount of the reduction I put on the fourth quarter. This way he's aware of it, and his client's aware of it. Okay? A few other things here. The interest on tax appeal refunds calculated at 5% from the date of the overpayment to the date of the tax appeal refund. In many instances, if the tax refund is made within 60 days of the date of the judgment, the interest is waived. Okay? We know that at this point. Talked about this already. Prior to issuing any tax appeal refunds, make certain that the property owner is not delinquent on property taxes, including interest, water, sewer, and water and sewer charges. Tax appeal refund can be applied to any of these delinquencies. And I get calls all the time. This guy has an outstanding parking ticket. Can I use the refund? I don't think you cannot do it against parking tickets. I get creative. If they haven't paid their parking tickets, you can't take the refund and send it up to court. I've checked out with Keith Bonchi already. Always playing defense. Obviously, the municipal resolution prepared indicating the amount of the tax reduction for the county board judgment and state tax court judgment. Okay? So those are some of my internal controls, bullet points, things that I live on. Okay, 3 other items here that I included when I prepared for this. I don't know how many people have heard of, anybody here of municipal compliance plans? Huh? What Rob does back in Bloomfield? Okay. We have a real good assessor in Cedar Grove. He's very aggressive. Rich is, I enjoy working with Rich. The guy's a sharp guy. And what we will do is, what you can do from time to time is municipal compliance plans. And basically what a municipal compliance plan, this is the letter he wrote to Cherner in Essex County. But basically what the compliance plan does is, in summary, if you know certain sections of your town is going down in value, why not reduce them, right? If you see sales prices less than the assessed valuation, why do nothing and wait for tax appeals to come in, okay? So I guess with this compliance plan, the assessors are more well-versed in this area than I am, to be honest with you. But I wanted to bring this in because this is one that I guess we did in 2016, where Rich, our assessor, he knew, I guess our ratio was 95%, but he knew in like 3 sections of our community, the ratio was over 101%. So why leave those assessments at the correct amount, right? Why not reduce them? So you're avoiding the tax appeals, because again, we get hammered on these tax appeals, right? You just showed, I reduced the guy's fourth quarter bill by $2,000, 55% of that is school money. Now I realize we make it up on ended assessments, and the county gives us county board of admissions, which, is anybody here from the county? It's kind of a joke if you really know anything about that. You know, I don't want to offend any county people, but it's a joke. I know Bonnie's here. You know, county board of admissions, they give it back to us, but they add it on to what they have to raise anyhow. So they raise the money to give it back to us. Ultimately, they should do a whole seminar on that. But hey, government's got to work like a business, right? So what our assessor does with the compliance plan is try to reduce, some of the sections, some of the areas in our town. So I guess we have 36 neighborhoods in our community. He reduced 3 neighborhoods, okay? So this is something he did back in 16. So this is an option that your assessor can do. So I just wanted, since we're talking about tax appeals, maybe we can try to avoid some of these tax appeals. Just an idea, something your assessor could do, okay? A couple other bullet points yet, and we'll get wrapped up. Hopefully you learned something out of this today, gang. That's what it's all about. 2 other things that I just want to talk about would be, we get buried by paper, right? Paper galore, just realize record retention for tax appeal judgments is 5 years. So when you go through, work with your clerk, what do they call it? The DARMs? Am I saying that right? DARM? You go work on DARM to get rid of your records, municipal records. Judgments, maintain these things for 5 years. So I think after 5 years, when we do our annual thing to submit to the state to get rid of municipal records, we're getting rid of our county board judgments, And it works out. We get these, we were talking about Oprah yesterday, right? We get buried with Oprah requests like crazy. So it's nice when the stuff's gone already. You don't have to worry about finding it. You know what I'm saying? It's not that I try to get rid of all this stuff. So send me Oprah request. Here's my piece of paper. I was able to get rid of it. So you got to play defense in government. You know what I mean? Always got to play defense. Okay, so record retention was that. And my last thing that I'm gonna talk about is, I don't know, anybody here from like Monmouth County? Okay, one person. Way in the back, Monmouth County. Okay, I don't know. I went to a number of his seminars, and I'm going to bring up kind of a calendar dealing with the Monmouth County tax proposal package. This was a pilot program. I don't know why every county doesn't adopt this, but I think what happens in government, they add more things to it and they really muck it up, if you will. That's an accounting term, all right? But I went to, this guy, Matt Clark, did a seminar at the, I think the TCTA conference, really did a nice job. And I was impressed with it, and I'm sure probably some assessors might shoot it down and say, hey, it's not a good idea. But if I can bring up the calendar, and this is what kind of drives me a little bit crazy in practice, okay? And if you can see this calendar, let's kind of talk about your calendar, and kind of what happens here, guys, in practice, and it drives me nuts, is, in practice, what happens? Okay? Under the old calendar, this is what we do. All right? Presently. All right? We get the tax duplicate in January 10th. Right? Comes in, January 10th, the assessor gives us the field copy of the duplicate. Bless you. Bless you. The field copy of the duplicate sits on top of the filing cabinet. Look how this does. Right? It sits there. January 10th, big deal. Thank you, Rich, for giving us. All right, the town would then adopt their budget, maybe not in March. Okay, maybe not in March, but early May, April, you adopt your budget. Then right now, the calendar is the tax appeals have to be filed by April 1st. And if you're doing a reval, it's May 1st. Right? So in the interim, at this point, we're floating along, waiting to get a tax rate, waiting June. I always do estimated bills, that's another seminar. I call the county, I do estimated bills, I call the county, I tell them don't rush. I'm not going to rush anyhow. Don't rush to get me a raise. I'm in no rush. Take your time, I get estimated bills. I tease them. That's our joke, So then all of a sudden, like end of July, we get a tax rate. Right? And then, okay, I tell my vendor to print the bills. And guess what? All the bills then are printed on the original duplicate. And the original duplicate has those original assessments. It doesn't have the $1.2 million going down to $1.1 million. Now what I gotta do as tax collector, I gotta pull all these bills and adjust it manually, go to my screen, adjust it manually, adjust the preliminary for next year. You know, there's gotta be a better system. Well, this is what they do in Monmouth County, all right? And you can correct me, I got 2 people from Monmouth County. And I love the idea, I just don't know why we just don't do it. So under the Monmouth County plan, let's now, okay, new calendar, all right? Here we have our preliminary assessments in our duplicate, but rather let's move the tax appeals up, okay? Let's move the tax appeal deadline from May 1st, non-reval town, I'm sorry, April 1st, non-reval town, May 1st, a reval town, to January 15th. Let's get these appeals in early, right? Wouldn't make sense? But I know, I talked to some assessors, they're saying it snows. What the hell is it snow? Snow. Tell me in Sussex County it snows. It snows all over. You can't make this stuff up. Is it me? Tell me it snows, you can't do it early. All right, are you kidding me? I wish I was making this up, guys, I'm not. It snows. So, the key here then, gang, is we get these appeals in early, January 15th, right? We then plot along, we then adopt the budget, okay? Then we get our tax rate. And then what we're going to do is, when they generate the final book, the book will have the reduced assessments in there already. So that calculate the tax rate using the revised net valuation. So the key is get these tax appeals, move the deadline up to January 15th, get rid of the April and May 1st date, right? This way, when all of these judgments come in, okay, I guess the appeals would be coming in, I guess, by April, we know what they are. When we generate the tax rate, it's going to be based on the reduced assessed valuation of our town. Then when the bills come in, we don't have to adjust one bill. You follow what I'm saying? And they're all correct. If the bills come in, I just mail them out. I'm done with it. And I don't know why, Matt, I was always impressed. I've heard her speak a couple times, and they put out like a whole big booklet, you know, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, with graphs and all this other stuff. I know I listened to him at the TCTA conference, I think he was there this year, and really did a good job. Guy's a sharp guy. And I just don't know why all counties just don't adopt this. Maybe it's because it's going to snow, I don't know. But that seems to be what I got, you know. But I think I'm getting close to 9:20 or so. But so this is kind of, you know, there's a whole calendar, there's a whole booklet that Matt put together. So I thought, since we're talking about tax appeals, let's kind of look at this Monmouth County calendar that I was really impressed with. So I think it kind of makes sense, and we'll see where it goes. But I would love for this to happen. This way I don't have to pull any bills and adjust them. How about, if it takes so long, because when do we get our tax rates this year, gang? I think I got mine,
July.
end of July. I don't think I have it here. Oh, I don't have one. Anyhow, I think I got mine probably the end of July. That's why, gang, I'm telling you, how many people do, not to change, how many people do estimated tax bills? Gang, you have to do estimated tax bills. And because I get my first meeting in June, we do a resolution. Send out, the tax bills are mailed out by mid-June for August. They're out. So all you have to do is estimate a rate. Now, granted, some extra postage. Collector's not going to want to do it because you've got to do additional mailing. You got 20,000 line items in your town. It's a big community. Like me, I got 4,800. And the nice thing, gang, is my last thing, look, I inadvertently, you have to estimate the tax rate. Well, I can figure a tax rate. My big problem when I figure the tax rate is, what's the county rate going to be? That's my guess. Well, ironically, I overestimated the county rate this year. So my estimated third quarter rate was too high. So again, you're sharp. What happens to your fourth quarter tax bill when you mail them out? It goes down. because I billed too much in the third quarter. Gang, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me, Mr. Homer, thank you for reducing my taxes. I tell you, man, we've been here day and night, slicing this budget, cutting services, getting pens here at the conference, sharing them in the office. You know, they don't the hell realize they overcharged on the third quarter. They don't know what they're doing anyhow. They get the bill and they get the third and fourth quarter and the preliminaries for next year. They say my taxes went up 20%. They don't add up those 4 quarters. They don't understand any of this. So the bottom line is I have people coming in day and night thanking me for reducing their taxes. And I say, thank you kindly, we're just constantly cutting. So, welcome to our community. But anyhow, I think it's 9:20 or so. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'll be around for a while. I think it's 9:20. Anybody have any questions? You can come up and see me. But hopefully you got something out of the seminar, gang. Try to put something together with tax deals.